What is going on, everybody? We are running a pretty odd Stokastic NBA Live Before Lock because it is 9 p.m. Eastern time. The NBA is running the dumbest schedule of all time today. So for whatever reason, there were no early games today, just 3 later games. So 3 games, 2 starting at 10 p.m., 1 starting at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. And to make this even more fun, Adam is here to do Live Before Lock with me. Adam does not typically do Live Before Lock, so he decided to do the worst start time for any show ever created. Adam has agreed to do it here. So do us a big favor, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel for Adam, who decided to stay up late with me. Adam, what's happening? How excited are you to be doing the show tonight?
Yeah, I'm thrilled. Much to Chat's disappointment, I kind of teased this morning that maybe I would go to the bar beforehand, but I didn't. So anybody that tuned in for that, sorry about that. But yeah, no, I'm excited to do this show, and then I'm excited to be up half the night because I had to make coffee to do this show.
Yeah, and then also, so I posted in Discord because it occurred to me, people may not even know we're doing a show tonight with the weird start times. So I said, hey guys, I'm doing the show. And to make it even more exciting, Adam is going to be doing it with me. And immediately somebody responded like, oh, cool. Adam's going to be doing it from the strip club. And no, Adam is just Adam's in his normal spot at home.
Yes, there's only a couple of them here. It's not a whole club full.
Yeah, if you see anybody pop up in the background at Adam's apartment, you know that's where they're coming in from. But there's other stuff to be excited about also, not just that we've got a Live Before Lock going on late tonight, not just that Adam is joining me, but also the World Cup is starting. And on a scale of 0 to 1, Adam, how excited are you about the World Cup?
You didn't give me a low enough number.
All right. So it's somewhere a little bit, like, give it a -0.2. But here's what's great about the World Cup. We've still got it covered over at Stokastic.com. We've got projections going up for all the fantasy that's going to be happening over there. So when the World Cup starts, if you guys don't know anything about soccer, which Adam doesn't, I don't have to ask Jordan. I already know he doesn't. I don't know anything about soccer, but I know there's an edge to be had in soccer DFS by using some of the projections that we're going to have over at Stokastic.com. And if you sign up using the promo code World Cup 2022, pretty straightforward promo code, you could get access to all of the tools that we have for the entirety of the World Cup. And also, we've got a World Cup package, $24.95. Also, World Cup plus Fantasy Cruncher for $55. You get access to everything that you're going to need to build winning DFS lineups for the World Cup. And that goes on for quite a bit of time, or so I've been told. All right, let's talk about NBA now. And Adam, we did have some news that just came in that I was not expecting. Not only is Paul George playing, which, he was questionable, that was probable. Kawhi Leonard is playing, which I really didn't expect. I thought Kawhi was probably going to sit out. And then he's also starting, which is another element of this I didn't expect. So, number one, what was your expectation for the Clippers coming into tonight? And what do you make of their starting lineup?
So I thought Kawhi was going to play once they upgraded him to questionable. I did not think he was going to start. I'm not doing a whole lot with that information unless you convince me I should be, or we get some sort of report that I should be. I had assumed he was going to play like 20 to 22 minutes off the bench like he did in the first couple of games. I went ahead and bumped him to 24 minutes when he started. It would seem really weird if they're just like, oh yeah, he played 2 games. He's been so sore he can't play for a month. He's playing 34 minutes tonight. Like, it's the NBA. Who the hell knows? But my assumption is just that him starting has more to do with just how they want individual rotations to work, more so than he's going to play, a ton more minutes than he would have.
Yeah, so to me, the significance of him starting, and it has nothing to do with me wanting to roster him. That's not something I'm thinking about at all. It hurts Paul George because now some of the minutes that Paul George is playing is going to be overlapping with Kawhi Leonard. To me, I think it makes Paul George just less appealing of an option. That's really what I take away from Kawhi starting.
Yeah, I think it's a negative for everybody in the starting lineup, I think.
Yeah,
that's
like, where
still
I'm
at the same time, he's like, George is probably going to play at least 12 minutes more than him. So like, I don't think it makes George a bad play. I think it makes him worse than if Kawhi was out.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about it too, is because even if Kawhi was playing, I figured he'd be coming off the bench and they just wouldn't be that many minutes that Paul George and Kawhi were sharing the court. But now I have to think almost all of the minutes that Kawhi will play, it's probably going to be alongside Paul George. It's not the end of the world for George, like you said, but it definitely makes him a little bit less appealing of a pay up option. Got some super chats coming in. If you guys have any questions for us in the Discord chat, throw those in. 3-game slate, so we should be able to answer most of the questions that you guys have relating to tonight's slate. And then also any super chats, we always get to those as well. First, starting with Weatherman7, just the normal pair sticker that he sent here. This is a pair dancing with a party blower, I believe. So Weatherman7 just seems like he's excited to see us here. And then we've got a super chat from Sotex. Big thanks to everyone at Stokastic and Live Before Lock. Took second in the 222 on FanDuel last night. Thanks again. Sotex, congrats. That's very cool. So always good to see when people come through and end up making some money. And we also got just on some other news items, just so that everybody's aware of everything that's happened over the last, 30 minutes or so, 45 minutes, stuff that would have been covered in the deep dive, but we didn't do the deep dive today because only 3 games and this slate starts at a ridiculous time. Keldon Johnson is in. He was originally listed as questionable. And then we have Yusuf Nurkic. He is in. He was also questionable. Justice Winslow in. He was listed as questionable. So just tackling some of these news items individually. With Keldon Johnson in the starting lineup for the Spurs, what does that mean for the rest of the players on San Antonio?
Status quo, pretty much. That's what they've done whenever Johnson's in this year. So I mean, the rates that you have for Devin Vassell, that you have for Jakob Poeltl, 1.1 to 1.15 DraftKings points per minute, those should hold. Trey Jones should continue to be around the fantasy point per minute guy as well. So I don't think it's not like you can talk about the impact in the same way you would if he was out, because it's more so just like all the shit they normally do, they're probably going to keep doing.
Yeah, I kind of wish we would have had some of these guys ruled out, just from the standpoint of there's not that much value on the slate. And it would have been nice if we had a Keldon Johnson out, or if we would have had, Nurkic get ruled out, just so that there would be some spot of value to go to. So as of right now, I'm running my lineups. It looks like I'm going to be getting to a good amount of Sacramento, and it's mostly because Keegan Murray's out. So I don't know what you're looking at in terms of value, Adam, but outside of Keegan Murray, he's kind of the only really super significant player. And by super significant, I just mean somebody who starts that typically plays a lot of minutes that's out. So it looks like a lot of the pricing value, for me at least when running my lineups, is coming in on the Kings. And it's just because there aren't any other situations that have any real points per dollar value. So I'm wondering, are the Kings a team that you envision yourself getting a lot of exposure to as you're updating lineups?
Yeah, so I just did a crunch right before the show, and I'm already rerunning another one, but I'm getting to a ton of the Kings. Like right now, if the slate started, Terrence Davis would be my highest owned guy on DraftKings. De'Aaron Fox is second. Sabonis is like 7th. I'm getting to Trey Lyles. I'm getting to Harrison Barnes. Actually, right as you had started talking, I was trying to decide because I saw that I was getting a lot of Terrence Davis and Trey Lyles. I was trying to decide if I was okay with playing them together, since like Lyles' minute ceiling takes minutes away from Davis, but I'm leaning towards being fine with it, just because they are both so cheap. They are likely to both play more minutes than they normally do. So I'm leaning towards just going ahead and playing both of them. But I'm getting to tons of Sacramento.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to end up doing as well. I mean, I'm rerunning lineups as well. And the problem with it is it's only 3-game slate. There's such limited value. And these two being, I think, 2 of the best, if not the best, points per dollar plays on the slate. If I don't allow them to be included in the same lineups or limit them in any kind of way, I think it just becomes too restrictive with the limited options.
Yeah, agreed.
And then is there any other kind of rule that you're going to set with them together? Maybe it wouldn't be to not include them, but anything to maybe make them so that their projection is lower, any way that they would be downgraded in lineups together to prevent them from popping up just too frequently together? Or are you just okay if that's the case?
I'm just okay with how it is. If the slate started right now, I'd have like 94% Terrence Davis. A quarter of those would have Trey Lyles. That's fine. Obviously, about 100% of the Trey Lyles lineups would have Terrence Davis, which isn't ideal, but I don't really want to cut Davis out. Like if he's starting, which I don't think is a guarantee, you could get Trey Lyles, you could get other things. KZ Okpala was starting back at the beginning of the year before Murray came back. But assuming Davis is starting, I only gave him 26 minutes, and he's still just in everything. So I don't really want to just be cutting him out of lineups for arbitrary reasons, I don't think.
Yeah, I am on the same page as you. I am getting to Terrence Davis. I'm pretty sure he's my most rostered player today. So Terrence Davis is popping up in a ton of my lineups. I'm going to be getting to him a lot. And it's just, what else am I going to in terms of pricing value? But I wanted to ask you also, because it was something that you had brought up right before we started. You think the Nets could potentially change their starting lineup. So I want to know what you're thinking of potential things that we could see the Nets go to, because that is something that could possibly be something that could break. We've got 50 minutes to go until lock. It could be something that comes about, 15 minutes before the slate starts to be reacting to on the fly. So what are those potential starting lineups you would see the Nets change, and why do you think that could be the case?
Yeah, so I mean, for one, there's just no reason that they can't change it. Their starting lineup sucks, and Kevin Durant made that very, very clear. But the spot that really sticks out is the Edmund Sumner spot, because we saw when Joe Harris first came back from his injury, they started him out off the bench, then they moved him into the starting lineup. They've done basically the same thing with Seth Curry, where they brought him off the bench. He played like 28 minutes. Last game he played 15 minutes in the first half. At some point, I expect Seth Curry to be in the starting lineup, at least. I mean, maybe not, or I guess probably not, like, once Kyrie comes back. But if, like, Kyrie were out for the year, you would absolutely expect that at some point Seth Curry was going to starting ahead of Edmund Sumner. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. Also, last game they did sub Ben Simmons in alongside Claxton. If they do make a starting lineup change and I had to guess what it is, my first guess would be Curry in place of Sumner. My second guess would be Simmons in place of Sumner. I think they could do either of those. I don't know if they will. Like, it would kind of suck for Sumner in some ways. Like, you have Kevin Durant call out the starters, and then Jacque Vaughn's just like, all right, Sumner's out of there. Like, that would kind of suck. But I don't know. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Curry's in the starting lineup. It would surprise me a little bit more, but not as much.
I want to pull up the Kevin Durant message because it was very funny and it was very matter of fact too, and he wasn't wrong.
No, he wasn't wrong at all.
It was one of those things where it's like, you're not wrong, but you shouldn't say it. It read very much to me in that kind of way. I'll go and see if I can find it on Twitter, assuming that Twitter is still operating right now. But by the way, Twitter, do you have any opinions of whether it's going to be extinct in the next couple of days?
I think it'll be fine. Also, don't really care outside of NBA news.
That is true. I didn't actually think of it from that way. I don't know where I would get news from. If Twitter ceased to exist tomorrow, that would actually, okay, now I'm very invested in it staying, because I don't know how, because I'm very reliant on Twitter to bet sports news before lines take it down. I don't know where I would get that information from.
Yeah, like, I'm very confident that something would open up very quickly, probably some sort of Discord. And I hate Discord, but I assume there will be some sort of Discord or something that would pop up pretty quickly. But yeah, that's the one thing, because like, I've already thought about it with the verification stuff, because like, I have no intention of paying $8 for verification just out of principle. And so I thought about it in terms of like, well, what if like the user experience on Twitter just becomes absolute shit if you don't? I was like, all right, well then I would just live without Twitter, except I do need it for NBA news really badly.
So what actually would happen, I don't want to get, pull the curtain back too far. I would have the company pay, if we actually we need it for work, we would just have the company pay $8 for everybody a month for Twitter. That's what would happen. And then we'd just get clowned for having the blue check marks. But if it became something that we would need for work, then we would need it for work. By the way, this is the quote from Kevin Durant. Look at our starting lineup: Edmund Sumner, Royce O'Neal, Joe Harris, Claxton, and me. It's not disrespect. What are you expecting from that group? You expect us to win because I'm out there. It's a little disrespectful, KD. A little disrespectful.
Yeah, like, it's not something that he probably should have said, but it's the absolute truth.
Yeah, and Kyrie is going to be back. It looks like Sunday he's going to be back in the starting lineup. But I mean, either way, it would be funny if they made that change. And the reality is, Seth Curry, assuming he's healthy, he's better than a lot of these guys anyway. And it's just a team that's really thin on depth right now. Kyrie's going to be back soon. I know Claxton's played really well, but if they want to make the Ben Simmons experiment work, I kind of think they should try starting at center. I don't know if it's going to work, but I think that they owe it to the team to at least try to see what they could get out of it, because I think that's the best position for Simmons.
Yeah, and they did kind of go that route last game. Obviously, Claxton started, but Claxton was just getting abused by Domantas Sabonis, and you did see Simmons start to take some of those minutes. So, again, I don't think it's right now, at least. I don't think it's super likely that Simmons like replaces Claxton in the starting lineup. I think at some point he certainly could, though.
Yeah, and not even as a permanent thing, but I think just the NBA regular season is 82 games. Let's assume that the Nets are going to make the playoffs, which, do we know that 100% for sure? No, we don't know that, but it's a reasonable assumption that we're going to see the Nets make the playoffs. And I think they want to at least try out Simmons at center just to see how it looks, to see if it's something that's a viable solution for them in the playoffs, because they traded James Harden to get Ben Simmons. You'd think you want to put Simmons at some point in a chance to succeed, or at least have the best chance to succeed possible. And right now, he just looks kind of lost. So we'll see what happens there.
He looked a lot better last game, just in terms of how he was playing, which was good to see. But overall, the season has certainly not been great.
And then just on the Simmons point, and then I'll answer. If you guys have any questions, throw them into Discord. I'll be answering those in a little bit. And I know Adam said he hates Discord. Don't worry though, I've got it open. I'm looking at it right now. Is if Ben Simmons, even if he comes off the bench, just while we're on the topic of the Nets, is there reason to look at him in large field GPPs on a 3-game slate just because, hey, he might be taking some of those center minutes away from Claxton?
I do think Simmons is interesting. That was actually one of the things I just changed when I was recrunching lineups. Was I hadn't initially set a rule to separate him and Claxton, since Simmons did actually play a few minutes alongside Claxton last game, but I ended up getting like a lot of them together, and I don't really want that. So I do think Simmons is playable on DraftKings, especially at relatively low ownership. I do think I'm leaning towards just doing it in lineups where I don't have Claxton. They are both cheap. Like Claxton at 5,500, even though I do think there's a real chance that Simmons takes some of those minutes, 5,500, he's still going to look pretty good. But Ben Simmons right now is projected for 4% ownership. I really do like that pivot. That's one of my favorite pivots on the slate, I think. Hopefully it doesn't turn out the same way as Seth Curry the other day, where he was projected for 4% ownership, not just by us, by literally everybody, and ended up being 20% owned. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah, I do think I'm getting the Simmons here. I projected them both for 26 minutes. It could be a little high, but I mean, that has them playing 4 minutes alongside each other. I think that's reasonable based on what we saw last game.
I doubt that Simmons' ownership is going to be high for a couple of reasons. Number one, nobody's projecting well. Nobody's projecting to play a lot of minutes. And I think it's hard to give him an average projection for a lot of minutes, but I would like to be a little bit more aggressive than not with Simmons, just because I know what the upside is. And it's a 3-game slate. The other thing I'm going to make about his ownership, everybody hates Ben Simmons. Nobody wants to play him. And I think that is something that's going to factor into a lot of people's decisions. But Ben Simmons, who, by the way, I think has had eligibility at every position other than shooting guard on DraftKings and FanDuel this year, which, kind of ironic, but Ben Simmons will never be given shooting guard eligibility, but point guard, small forward, power forward, center, he's had all of those. 5,400, he's projected for 3% ownership on DK right now. And over on FanDuel, he is projected at 5,700 for 9% ownership, 9% ownership. So fairly low on both sides. I don't really think that is going to change unless he starts. If he starts, then that would definitely sway his ownership. As long as it comes off the bench, I don't think people are going to get there. And by the way, if you didn't see Adam, we got an ownership update about a minute ago.
Okay. Yeah, no, I did not see it. Thanks.
So some questions in our Discord channel first from Steven Leibowitz. So I'm hanging out with some strippers from Baltimore who claim they always play the NBA slate and they have no help tonight. Adam, this feels directed at you. They asked about their stack, and I think they meant the Spurs Kings game was the one game they're thinking about stacking. So, all right, the short version of this question: if you were stacking one game, you're hand building one lineup, and you're trying to make it a game stack, which would be the game that you end up stacking?
Most likely Spurs and Kings. It's just very, very easily my highest owned game right now.
Same. And that's not with me setting any kind of specific rules. It's just, I think Fox and Sabonis are the two best pay up options on the slate. I think the Spurs have a bunch of really reasonably priced options. And the reason they project so well, here are the totals, just the spreads for the point totals for these games at sports books. Kings Spurs, 236.5 points. Nets Blazers, 221.5. And then Clippers Pistons 218. And then you've also got the weird Clippers situation with Kawhi Leonard back in the mix. It's just by far the game where the players project the best. And it's not even about this being, a certain stack or the king side. It is because there's value available, but it's just these are the best points per dollar plays.
Agreed.
Some super chats we caught up on. Oh, here it is one from the Claw 28. I assume this is Kawhi Leonard himself. Best pay up on DK between Durant, Paul George, and Damian Lillard. Durant, Paul George, Damian Lillard.
I don't have a lot of any of them, which is kind of scary. Lillard's my highest owned of the group. I had like 20% right now.
So my preference of a pay up, I know he wasn't in that list you gave. It's Fox and Sabonis. And they're a little bit cheaper. We just talked about the game environment and also the Kings. No Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray wasn't some guy who was, super impactful on offense. It's not like he was a really high usage player, but his absence still does open up a little bit more opportunity in the Kings starting lineup. But most importantly, also, just it's hard to get up to Kevin Durant, Paul George, and Damian Lillard. They're expensive, and there isn't that many punt plays available on the slate. I think in terms of points per dollar, like I have Fox and Sabonis projected better than Paul George and Damian Lillard, and they're both more expensive. So I find it really difficult. And also Durant is really expensive today. I find all three of them hard to get to.
Yeah, and actually I have about 20% right now of both Durant and Lillard, which is just a lot more than I have of Paul George.
And the other thing too on the Paul George point, just brought up before, he's coming off injury, and then we've also got him in the starting lineup alongside Kawhi Leonard. That could present some kind of issues for him in terms of usage. So
I did right after we talked about that, I did go back just to see Paul George's normal rotation. I think there's a very good chance they end up staggering their minutes just because one, it would make sense anyway. But Paul George typically has played like the entire first quarter, the entire third quarter. So I think it would make a lot of sense to have Kawhi play like 6 minutes, go to the bench. George finishes the quarter. Kawhi plays 6 minutes. George comes back in and closes the half. You could do the same thing in the second half, or maybe just have Kawhi close the game and then they're playing alongside each other. But I do think you see some semblance of staggering minutes there.
Rashawn Holmes has been ruled out tonight. That is not going to really be too impactful. He's been pretty non-existent for the Kings this year. Some more questions that we're getting in the Discord chat. First from Jets World. He wants to know Hurdle, Johnson, or Vassell for his single entry lineup. Let me sort.
Pretty sure he's not going to like my answer here. 46% Pirtle, 41% Johnson, 40% Vassell. So I mean, I guess Pirtle, but kind of just whatever fits best in your lineup.
So if we're just doing it based on who I have projected the highest of those guys, it's Keldon Johnson for me. So that would be my answer. If there's no sort of salary restrictions, Keldon Johnson 7,400, Pirtle is 7,200, Vassell is 7,000, and I do have Keldon Johnson projected the highest of the three. Is that the case for you as well?
Let me see. I have Keldon at 37.5, Vassell at 35, and Pirtle at 36. So Keldon 1, Pirtle 2, Vassell 3 in terms of projection.
Yep, that is the exact same for me. I have Keldon 38.1, Pirtle 35.7, and then Vassell 34.8. So all, somewhat close to each other, but if it's just one that you're picking, Keldon Johnson is the one that I would lean with in that scenario. Next question here we have is from BP Colonia. He wants to know, can we get thoughts on Roby grading out well in the boom bust tool? And then he also has noted that Doug McDermott is out. Yes, Doug McDermott is out. So Isaiah Roby, actually, Jordan, could you pull the boom bust tool up on screen? And we'll give this a look per BP's question. So right now, just so people get a good look at some of the data that we're looking at over here. And by the way, if you guys have not checked out the tools we have over at Stokastic.com, get 3-day free trial. That's something that we have going on right now. And then also, we're sponsored by BetMGM today. If you guys do not have a BetMGM account, if you could sign up and click on our link, you get 2 free months of a Stokastic Plus Platinum package. But in addition, a risk-free bet of up to $1,000. And with that 2 free months of Stokastic Plus, you're going to get access to our projections, ownership projections, our lineup generator, and then all the tools we have like the boom bust tool, where you'll see based on some of our simulations, how we have players projected, what their ownership projection are, and then how likely we project them to be in the optimal lineup. So at least as of right now, we do have Isaiah Roby as being one of the better tournament plays on the slate. And I do think there's a case for him. If you guys want to pay up for the likes of Kevin Durant, the likes of Damian Lillard, there isn't that many really cheap punt options available. And I don't think Roby's minutes are necessarily guaranteed, but there is a little bit more opportunity with him in the absence of Doug McDermott. And Isaiah Roby is a decent points per minute fantasy producer, at least relative to some of the other cheap options. In large field tournaments, Adam, is Isaiah Roby somebody you're getting to?
Yeah, had around 10% in the crunch I ran before the show. I'm running the new one now. Might get a little bit more because I did dial back Ben Simmons minutes a little bit to 24. 26 I decided was a little bit aggressive, but that could have a little bit of a trickle-down effect too, where maybe I get a little bit more Roby. But yeah, for all the reasons you said, the Spurs are actually really thin with McDermott out, and it's a situation where it's not really that noticeable because a lot of the guys out are guys that don't really matter, but no Barlow, no Branham, no Collins, so that's the Bassey minutes. No Langford, who typically soaks up some minutes. No McDermott. No Wesley. They're actually pretty thin. Like the guys that can soak up these McDermott minutes, like you're already getting, Sohan Richardson, Bates Diop, you're already projecting those guys for, mid to upper 20s in minutes. So basically, assuming that they're not going to play Bassi alongside Pirtle, which would just be weird, you essentially have Jordan Hall, Gorgie Jang, and Isaiah Roby as the options. I don't expect Jang to be playing minutes alongside Bassi or Pirtle unless the game's completely out of hand. I don't like Jordan Hall's not really helping you out at all there. They already have plenty of guards. Roby's the only big that kind of fits in there. So I'm expecting around 18 minutes from Roby. And like you said, he's not a bad point per minute guy, and he's only 3K.
Yeah. And he's also, relative to a 3-game slate, he's not really owned. So if we look at him over on FanDuel, where he's the min price, he's 6% owned. Over on DK in our latest ownership run, he is at, where is Isaiah? Okay. So yeah, Roby 10% owned at the flat min over on DK. Yeah. I mean, there's an opportunity for him to play extended minutes. It's hard to say exactly what it's going to be because the Spurs are so shorthanded. But in a best case scenario, maybe get like 20-ish minutes from Isaiah Roby. If he has some good shooting variance on his side, maybe picks up a couple defensive stats, could be looking at mid-20s fantasy points for Isaiah Roby, and that would be super valuable on a slate like this. So BP, answering your question, yeah, I think Isaiah Roby, I wouldn't play him in a cash game or anything. Large field tournaments, I do think that he makes sense as a punt play. The next question we have here is from Pat Clay Tomstar. Pat Clay Tomstar. What is the lowest salary allocation you're willing to set on DK? So I don't set any kind of rules for basketball in terms of the least amount of salary I'd get to. I will say that in some of my better projected lineups today, I have ones that are leaving $300-$500 on the table on DK, and pretty frequently I'm going to end up, especially on 3-game slates, I'm going to end up with lineups that just leave a bunch of salary on the table. Not anything crazy, not like thousands. But if I have lineups that are leaving $600-$700 in salary on the table, it's not really that much of an issue for me. And generally on smaller slates, it's more prone to happen than big slates. But do you set any kind of minimum salary restrictions, Adam?
No, I don't think you really need to in NBA because unless you're doing something like just using 1,000,000% randomness, you're just gonna get you're gonna end up using most of the cap anyway. So the same thing for you. Like even just right now, looking at the huge set of lineups that I created in Fantasy Cruncher to choose from. If I look to see what the lowest salary is, it's gonna take forever apparently. But I'm not expecting it to be more than a few $100s off of the max. And I'm fine with that. On a 3-game slate, especially, even on bigger slates, I don't care if I leave a few $100s. But the cheapest lineup I even created was 48.3, which is absurdly low, and I almost absolutely won't end up playing that lineup. But for the most part, like I created 1,500 lineups. I would guess that like 1,475 of them use at least 49K.
Yeah. So for me, I could say of the lineups I built in, I have a set of lineups built out right now, and as long as nothing changes, this is going to be the final lineups I enter. The one I have that's leaving the most amount of salary on the table is $600. And once again, this isn't me setting any kind of rules. It's just these are the lineups that came out for me, and it's not anything absurd. But if you're building lineups and you're like, oh, I really like these players, but I have $500 salary left on the table, who cares? Right? It's totally fine to have lineups that are leaving some salary on the table. One thing I did want to ask you, though, in terms of restrictions, are you creating any rules to try to limit the amount of players that you'll get from the Kings in any one lineup? Because I do get some lineups that have a bunch of Kings players.
I didn't do anything on this slate. Just again, it's a 3-game slate. There's so many ways that it can work out where 4 or 5 Kings actually end up being useful. And I'm not getting like lineups where I have 5 or 6 anyway. So I'm not overly concerned about that one either.
We have a super chat here from another one from the Claw 28, Terrence Mann or John Wall.
I prefer Wall. He's been playing alongside Reggie Jackson a bit, which is just really good for his playing time. I thought there was a chance that Mann was going to start today, but Kawhi took that away. So I have Wall in for 25 minutes. I have Mann in for 19. Wall's the better point per minute guy as well. So I would lean Wall.
Yeah, there's a massive salary gap between them. So I guess it depends what the opportunity cost is here as well, because John Wall is $5,700 on DK. Terrence Mann is $3,800. So I do have Wall projected for a lot more fantasy points, but he's also $2,000 more expensive. Let me look. Maybe is it closer over on FanDuel? Either way, The answer to me, if it's a 1v1, the answer is pretty clearly John Wall for me. And John Wall's looked good this year. I don't know how much you've seen him play for the Clippers, but physically in the limited amount of time, also there's a $2,000 salary difference between them on FanDuel as well. He's looked physically pretty good to me, which I guess could be expected because he's, by the way, we just got the Nets starting lineup. Nothing, Sumner, Harris, O'Neal, Durant, Claxton. So nothing's changed. Exact same lineup of people who Durant basically just called bums a few days ago.
Yeah. I feel like he kind of painted Jack Vaughn into a tough spot because like you were never going to get Harris or O'Neal benched anyway, and you probably weren't going to get Claxton, but like just especially with Kyrie about to come back anyway, just let Edmund Sumner get his start. Don't single him out like he's like the weakest of the weak cast.
Yeah, we're not to single anybody out. He's saying it while looking at him at the press conference,
right.
Edmund Sumner's in the back of the room, points
right.
at him. So, and I mean, the other thing too is with the Nets, this seems like the biggest disaster for a team to manage from so many perspectives because just there's so much stuff that's always going on in terms of drama. It's like, Katie, can you not do the press conference where you say the other guys you play with suck?
Just right. It's like they have a quota where like every week one of them has to do something ridiculous, and Kyrie's been away from the team, so Durant had to step up and take over.
Yeah, like Kyrie texts him like, "Yeah, it's your turn. Can you right. pick up the slack for me? Somebody, we're not making headlines." And then Kyrie will be back in a couple of days. We've got a couple of questions in here from some other guys. First, from Ryan Lang. Do your betting alerts come through your Discord or one of the Stokastic ones? I selected alerts. Yeah, so we have our premium betting Discord channel, and I don't know. I don't know how betting the different Discord stuff works, but if you're in my premium betting Discord, which if you message me, I'll send you the link later. You get 1 week free access, and then in there is where I send out alerts, which I had a good one today. I bet the over in the Bills game, Adam, because it got moved from the snowy weather to the dome. So I bet a point total that moved like a full touchdown right before
it changed. On DraftKings where they didn't immediately cancel it, like I heard FanDuel did.
So so what I did was, because I was aware of the rules of the different sports books, I looked it up. So BetMGM, which by the way, I think it's totally valid for books to do this if there's a venue change that they void bets. DraftKings,
it's like the starting pitcher rule in baseball.
Yeah, but and there's the starting pitcher action, no action, different bets you could select. But I went and because once I started to read that it could potentially be a possibility, I went and looked and I read the terms and conditions on DraftKings, and it said that if there's a venue change, the bets stand. And I was like, all right, well, if they change, I'm immediately betting the over in this game. And that's what happened. The venue changed, and then the total went up by, 7 points. So yeah, just something to be aware of if you guys are betting on DraftKings, and not this happens all that frequently. There was like a hurricane game a couple of years ago, but for football, baseball, basketball games, at least on DraftKings, those bets stand if there's a venue change. The next question we have in here is from Steven Leibowitz. Last man in, Bassey or Sokan? Look at my projections.
If you don't have Pirtle, I would probably say Bassey. If you have Pirtle, I would say Sohan.
I have them projected within 0.2 of a fantasy point of each other. I just get to more of Sokan in my builds, though, because he's power forward eligible and Bassey is center.
Yeah, I think like Sohan's easier to get into lineups. The reason that I would answer Bassey to that question is just like Sohan is almost definitely going to play more minutes, but Sohan isn't a great point per minute guy. Bassey, Sohan's one of those guys where like you kind of need two things to go right. You need him to play more minutes than normal, and you need him to actually be productive in those minutes. Charles Bassey is pretty much always productive in his minutes. You just need Pirtle to get in foul trouble or the game to blow out, and Bassey to play 22 or 24 minutes instead of 18, and you should be good there.
Yeah, and by the way, because somebody asked to follow up, so the game was supposed to be played in Buffalo. They're going for 6 feet of snow in Buffalo. And by the way, I live in the New York area, not quite as far north as Buffalo. It was 80 degrees a week ago, but they're going for 6 feet this weekend. So yeah, what they did is they moved the game to Detroit to keep them out of the weather. Starting lineup for the Blazers just came in: Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, Josh Hart, Jeremy Grant, Yusuf Nurkic. So no changes there. 1.6 asking us a question. Oh, by the way, this is going to be important. Get to these questions in a second. Starting lineup for the Kings: Fox, Davis, Herter, Barnes, Sabonis. So it is going to be Terrence Davis starting for the Sacramento Kings. He's the best value play on the slate. Play him in cash games, play him in tournaments. Any pushback or concerns about Terrence Davis, Adam?
No. How many minutes do you have him at?
So now that he's starting, I guess I'll go 28 on him.
Okay, because I was expecting him to start. I went 26. That's what he averaged in like 9 starts last year with De'Aaron Fox active. I was just trying to get some sort of sample of, a semi-healthy team where Davis was starting. So I went 26, and I'm getting a ton. But I also just had him projected higher than like everything else I've seen. So I thought maybe I was just like losing my mind. I don't know if maybe people just didn't have him starting yet.
Yeah, I think here's the thing is 26 versus 28 minutes. That typically would make a massive difference on this slate. Whether you have him for 26 or 28, he ends up popping up in like almost everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Terrence Davis is going. Yeah, he's going to be in almost all my lineups today at his price at $4,300. So here's something else I think we could look at from the Kings standpoint. You and I were both very much on board with Terrence Davis. Who is your favorite player that's coming off the bench today for the Kings?
That's kind of what I was just trying to work on right now because thinking about it, it's Malik Monk because he can just so easily step into these Terrence Davis minutes and, just play big minutes. And Monk is averaging nearly 26 minutes per game over his last 5. Like there's all of that. But from a salary standpoint, I'm actually getting to Trey Lyles more than Monk. And Lyles is someone that could step into more minutes too. Like that's one thing about the Kings is when you have Kevin Huerter and you have Harrison Barnes, those guys can defend multiple positions. So even though Trey Lyles and Terrence Davis are different positions, you could get, more minutes than you're expecting from Lyles as well. But I think Lyles is the one I probably get to the most. I think that Monk is the one almost that I would like to get to the most. I think he's like the natural Terrence Davis pivot.
Yeah, so for me the answer is Malik Monk. I'm getting to him, and by the way, I'm overweight to both. I'm overweight to Monk. I'm overweight to Trey Lyles. I'm overweight to pretty much everybody on the King on the Kings tonight. But for me, the reason the answer is Malik Monk, it's just because he's the guy who I think has the most upside if the minutes end up going to him. He's somebody who could score a lot of points in a hurry. His minutes also, it's hard to know what to make of them. He played 17 minutes last game. Now, in those 17 minutes, he shot 6 of 9 from the field. He scored 27 fantasy points, but it's the usage for me where it's just like, all right, if this guy gets on the court, he could do damage because the last few games, 28% usage, 25%, 22%, 21%, 26%. A couple weeks ago against the Heat, he had a game with a 34.4% usage rate. I know it's difficult to project Monk for all the many minutes and be confident in it, but I just really like the upside of Monk if the minutes go his way, which is sometimes what I care about more than anything. It's if I am right on this guy getting on the court, what does it mean for me? And to
Yeah,
me, if Malik
exactly.
Monk
And
gets it's there's a lot of ceiling with him.
yeah, 100% agree. And I think so. I didn't realize he was 5,200 on DraftKings. I thought he was like 46 or 47. So now it does make more sense to me why I wasn't getting more. I did go ahead and give him a 25th minute so that I'll get more than like the 4% that I was getting. But yeah, like the last game just kind of concerns me with him because there was, there were plenty of opportunities for him to play more, and even in the second half, he didn't play a lot. But if he gets hot, you could certainly see more minutes from him.
Yeah, I have, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be, unless anything crazy changes, I'm going to upload my lineups right now. I have 25% Malik Monk on DK. And once again, it's not because I feel just uber confident that he's this crazy good points per dollar play. It's just if the minutes go his way, he has potential to be a really high upside guy. And that's not necessarily the case with some of the other players that are coming off the Kings bench. Like I know Malik Monk could score. I know he could do a lot in a hurry. Whereas other guys, that might not really be the case. Anybody else from the Kings that you want to talk about here now that we have that starting lineup?
Not specifically. I think it's worth noting with guys like Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter that their minutes are probably a little bit more secure. And so the Kings too, they're getting into a ton of my lineups, and I'm projecting them to have KZ Okpala in the rotation. If they don't, and I gave Okpala, I think, 10 minutes. If they take him out of the rotation, the Kings are even better than I'm expecting because that would mean instead of having like a 32-minute projection on Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes, it would need to be like 34, 35. Instead of like 24 on Monk, it's probably 26. Instead of 26 on Davis, it's probably 28. So there's a non-zero chance they run a tighter rotation than I'm expecting, and they're already my favorite team.
We've got a super chat here from the Claw, another one from the Claw. Thank you for all the support in the super chats. And by the way, guys, if you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Another way that you could help support the show here. But the Claw saying, Best utility for 4,000 and under with upside on DK off the top of my head. I believe that's Trey Lyles, but let me look
I think it's Lyles.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who else is even in the for 4,000.
Bates Diop is Bates Diop still?
Yeah. Okay. So there's actually there's a couple of guys that I get to here actually. Josh Richardson is 4,000. He's somebody that's viable today. I think he's a little bit overowned, but Josh Richardson is sensible. Keita Bates-Diop, who, if I'm not mistaken, when you came in second in the $15, wasn't Bates-Diop in that lineup, Adam?
Yeah, he was. And if he could have like scored 4 fantasy points in the last 7 minutes of the game, I would have gotten first.
Well, either way, he helped you get
he
second.
He had already 10x'd at like 5% owned, so I can't complain too much.
So for me, there's 3 potential guys here: Bates-Diop, Josh Richardson, and Trey Lyles. Those are the only 3 that I get more than 10% exposure to around that price point. Is there anybody else that you would add into that mix? To me, number 1 is Bates-Diop, though.
Yeah, I think that's what it is too. Let me just sort by salary. You said below 4K, right?
Or 4K or below. So Josh Richardson would also be in the mix.
Yeah, so I have Richardson 1, Bates-Diop 2, Roby 3, Lyles 4.
All right, there you have it. Next question we have in here. This is from 1.6. Asking, any reason why you think Nurkic only played 15 minutes last game and Eubanks played 33? Not in foul trouble. I can tell you it fucked my lineups the other day. Yeah. So going into this late, I could not have been. When I saw that Yusuf Nurkic was 5% owned, I thought I had the best GPP play of the slate. And he literally got subbed out the first whistle of the game and just barely played. He was questionable on the injury report today. Maybe he wasn't totally healthy. Eubanks also played pretty well off the bench. I don't know what to make of the situation, though. Like, I don't think that it's a thing where it's just like, hey, Eubanks is going to start to siphon minutes from Nurkic. I think he just played well that game. Nurkic wasn't 100%, and they just kind of rode with it.
I think it was a game flow thing. And I think that for a couple of reasons. One, it just doesn't make any logical sense for them to bring Nurkic back from a multiple game absence if he's so hurt that he can only play 15 minutes. And then 2, he was actually producing a bit when he was on the floor. It's not like he was just out there doing nothing. But the Blazers or the Spurs went on a plus 12 run right out of the gate. They subbed Nurkic out at the end of that. Him and Simons went to the bench. Nurk comes back in to start the second quarter. Immediate plus 9 run for the Spurs. Nurk goes out. Starts the second half. Nothing crazy happens there. He plays 5 minutes, goes to the bench. That one's kind of weird. Comes back in to start the fourth. Plus 4 run for the Spurs. He goes right back to the bench. So the fact that like him, he just overlapped with a ton of the Blazers getting destroyed makes me think that was probably the most likely thing. But it is a really tricky spot here because I don't know. Like I have him in for 27 minutes right now. Winslow being back concerns me a bit because it shouldn't surprise anybody if Winslow's in this closing lineup over Nurkic. That rotation certainly scares me. The fact that I don't know exactly how banged up he is, but I just think it's more likely that it was a case of they are destroying us with Nurkic on the floor than that he like physically could only play 15 minutes, because why would they have chose that day to bring him back?
Yeah, and I've 5% of Nurkic right now. Like it's not a team I'm getting all the much exposure to. It's hard to project the minutes, and there's just other spots I like better. Now, if Nurkic goes out and has a big game, I'm going to feel like an idiot because I projected him so well the other day. It's just hard for me to give him the minutes that would make him pop up in a lot of my lineups.
So I had 28% in the crunch I ran before the show, and that's one reason I cut him from 28 to 27 minutes. I'm rerunning everything now, so I'll know where I'm at. But yeah, he scares the shit out of me, but also could obviously be good. Like he's a good point per minute guy.
Yeah, I'm just getting other guys, and I would feel like a real idiot if he goes out and has a big game. So ensue that he's going to go out and have a big game now. DC24. We talk about Zubats' numbers with PG and Kawhi. I have to assume that this is less good for Zubats, who's played really, really well as of late. But we've also got him to a point now where he's $6,400, which kind of where his price is settled now at this point. He played 33 minutes last game. His usage was only 7%. Zubats, another guy kind of in the same vein as me as when it comes to like Nurkic. I can see the potential upside for him. I also think that Zubats is too popular for me on this slate. It's more ownership than I think is warranted.
So he's played he's only played 2 games, the 2 this year, obviously. In the last 2 years where they were both in. If you go back 3 years ago, which, you're getting into kind of some weird stuff doing that, but 45 games where Kawhi and George have both been active, 22.8 minutes per game. Again, don't read into that because Zubats wasn't a starter for a lot of that time. But he did average 0.95 DraftKings points per minute. In that same time period, he's played 54 games without Kawhi and with George. He's averaged 1.01 DraftKings points per minute. So I don't think it's a huge hit for him from a point per minute standpoint.
Is he somebody that you're getting to at a decent clip?
I will have an answer in a second.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, for me personally, I'm not. There's other guys I got to. So my most roster, like I did get to Claxton more. Claxton, I have projected pretty similarly to Zubats, but he's a lot cheaper. So he is $900 less expensive over on DraftKings. And then the FanDuel situation, Claxton is $6,400. Zubats is $6,000. So that's a little bit different in that. Over on FanDuel, I actually get to Zubats more. So it depends which site you're talking about, but for FanDuel, I prefer Zubats. For DK, I prefer Claxton.
I do know he just happens to be in the very first lineup I entered, but that's not always indicative of me having a lot of somebody. Could just be a random thing.
We got some more questions in the Discord chat here. And by the way, I think that just to sum up the question from 1.6, I think to Adam's point, we're probably just game flow, not anything I think is predictable going forward. Jetsworth wants to know Roby or Kata. He said KDP. I assume he means Kata Bates job though.
Bates. I have Bates the up ahead of Roby.
Yeah, same for me. Opposite Opsexo, he wants to know what are your thoughts on Bagley and the center position in general. So Bagley is another one who it's kind of hard to know exactly what his minutes are going to look like. He started last game. He got extended minutes, certainly more than I thought he was going to in his first start of the year. It was only his second game of the entire season. I think he has the ceiling, though, to play close to 30 minutes. Once again, I'd rather play Nick Claxton in that same sort of price range. And then even Nurkic and Zubats, I think, might be a little bit higher of upside plays. But what do you make of Bagley tonight?
I'm getting around 15% on DraftKings right now. To put that in context, I'm also getting about 15% of Nurkic. I'm getting around 11% of Zubats. I only have 8% Claxton, but that's an ownership thing. If you're talking cash, I think Claxton probably ahead of that whole group. Or if you're just talking, like the best projected guys. But basically, I think Bagley's just kind of a secondary guy. At center, I'm getting a lot of Jakob Poeltl, a lot of Domantas Sabonis, and then kind of just mixing the other guys in.
All right, and then we've got T. Lee.
I am expecting Bagley to basically play the Isaiah Stewart rotation, where Stewart's averaging around 29 minutes. Duren plays like 19 behind him. I'm expecting Bagley to play around 29 here.
Yeah, no, I think to me, I think where you said you have him like around 15%, that's perfectly reasonable. I think he's somebody who, if he gets the minutes, he could have some upside, but not any kind of priority on today's slate. T. Lee wants to know who are our favorite plays. So let me go through the lineups that I have built so far on FanDuel and DraftKings, and I should be done with that. How are you doing on your lineups, Adam?
They're in. I'm just trying to decide how I feel about having 45% Isaiah Roby.
Well, T. Lee asked us who are some of our favorite plays. So how about if we just go position by position, Adam, and just who some of like our couple most rostered players at each spot right now. And I could go through FanDuel and DK for myself, but starting DK at point guard, it is Fox and Richardson right now for me. What about you at point guard, Adam?
Same too. Fox, Richardson, Lillard would be third.
And then over on FanDuel, it is Lillard and Fox. Pricing scenario is just different there. Over on DK for me, it is Terrence Davis and Devin Vassell.
1 second, I'm rerunning.
Oh, good. Yeah, and
I wanted to give Bates Diop an extra minute and take one from Roby because I had 45% Roby and 11% Bates Diop, and that seems like an extremely aggressive stand on something that I don't care about.
And then, go ahead.
Shooting guard for me would be Davis 1. I already used Richardson at point guard, so Vassell 2.
Yeah. So, same for me. And then FanDuel, shooting guard, Terrence Davis and Malik Monk. Malik Monk is only $4,400 on FanDuel. I'm already getting to him on DK at the more elevated price point. I really like his upside at $4,400 on FanDuel. I think that he has potential to really break the slate at that kind of price. Small forward for me, it is also Terrence Davis, and then Keldon Johnson is the other one. How about for you at small forward, Adam?
So I mean, shit, wrong button. Terrence Davis, I already mentioned him at shooting guard.
Yeah.
Keldon Johnson and Harrison Barnes are the next two behind Davis.
Small forward for me on FanDuel. Also, Terrence Davis and Keldon Johnson. Power forward on DK for me. Keita Bates-Diop, and then I just have a bunch of guys mixed in. Like Bates-Diop is my most rostered power forward, and then I just have a lot of guys that are kind of similar in ownership. Trey Lyles, Harrison Barnes, Sokan's in there. So power forward's kind of a mishmash for me.
Yeah, right now for me it's Isaiah Roby and Trey Lyles. Kind of hoping that changes, but also I get it. Like there's just not a lot of power forward plays that I really like. There are a lot of other plays I like.
Power forward on FanDuel for me, Keldon Johnson, Domantas Sabonis. And then talking about centers on DK, Domantas Sabonis is number 1, and then Jakob Poeltl is 2.
Sabonis 1, Poeltl 2.
And then FanDuel for me at center, Sabonis and also Poeltl. So a lot of synchronicity across the two sites. And also just for did you just choke on your coffee?
No, I said that's a hell of a word.
Oh, so just to just for transparency, I'm only entering lineups on DraftKings today, but
Bates-Diop is starting for Keldon Johnson.
So I'm assuming that means Keldon Johnson isn't playing.
That is my assumption also.
Okay, so all right, this is a big pain in the ass right now. So I am going to take I'm just taking Keldon Johnson out right now. Have to redo everything. I like how stuff all goes to shit always in the last couple minutes. And does that game start at?
Yep, starts in 8 minutes.
Okay. So my assumption right here is that Keldon Johnson does not play. I'm zeroing him out. 0 minutes for Keldon Johnson. I'm taking him out. I want him to appear nothing for me. About 5 seconds ago, I said he's my most rostered small forward and power forward. 0% of them now. Now, the trickle-down effect of this. So the starting lineup for the Spurs, it is Jones, it is Vassell, it is Bates-Diop, it is Sochan, it is Jakob Poeltl. So I am going to be boosting all of these guys now. I'm going to be getting to a shit ton of Keita Bates-Diop. Vassell, he is also going to be getting a bump here, where I'm going to be getting to a little bit more of him. Josh Richardson off the bench. Let's give him a few more minutes. Josh Richardson, he's going to pop in the lineups. Trey Jones, guess what? More usage available for you. Are there any, I know you're updating a lot of stuff too, Adam, but just off the top of your head, are there any bench guys here that are going to benefit more than the other ones that you think would make for a good contrarian play now?
I mean, I think Roby, Richardson, and, Bates-Diop's not a bench guy. Those are the guys that I gave, the bulk of the minutes to. I have Hall in the rotation now too, but probably not going to be.
All right, so I'm going to rerun lineups. I did not try to look over the minutes or anything as closely as possible. I just want to make sure I get Keldon Johnson out and then rerun lineups and just get it so that I have at least what I think are serviceable lineups in these last few minutes. And now while I'm reading it off, I am getting to an absurd amount of the Kings Spurs game. Like all of my most rostered players right now, let's see, Davis, Sabonis, Bates-Diop, Fox, Vassell, Trey Jones, Isaiah Roby, Richardson, Poeltl, like almost all of my most rostered players are coming from that game, and I am totally okay with that being the case.
Yeah, perfectly fine with that. That was already the case anyway, but for me.
But now just even more so. So I'm going to update these lineups, entering them in right now. Why it's so also for reference for everybody watching, do not play Keldon Johnson. I can't say definitively that he is not going to play, but historically, when we see these situations arise, more often than not, they do not end up playing. So that is going to be my assumption. Are you going to go with 0% of Keldon Johnson, Adam?
Yeah, I just completely removed him because two things. One, he was questionable, then he was good, now he's not starting. He was starting, now he's not starting. So I think it's very likely he's just not playing. The other thing is, let's say he does end up playing, he's still certainly going to be over-owned compared to what you can expect out of him. Like, he's going to be getting some ownership still because this happened 8 minutes before lock. So when you think about the entire range of outcomes where it's like heavily skewed towards he's actually not going to play, and then there's still some non-zero chance that you get Keldon Johnson just emerged from the locker room, 3 minutes into the game. It's still just, I would much rather be on the side where I just don't pay rake every time that he's actually not going to play.
By the way, trickle down effect, because I just updated my lineups, threw them in. So I've got that all set. Let me make sure there aren't any super chats that I missed out on here. Somebody in chat saying he's starting. He's not starting. We just got the starting lineup. Keldon Johnson is not in it. The starting lineup, just to reiterate, from the Spurs. Now watch the game starts and Keldon's in the starting lineup. I would absolutely not be happy in that scenario. But starting lineup for the Spurs, just to reiterate the information that we got, it is Jones, Vassell, Bates, Jop, Sochan, and Pirtle. There is no Keldon Johnson in the starting lineup.
Guys, stop using DraftKings and FanDuel starting lineups. Like, Keldon Johnson was in the starting lineup. They gave him the check mark. The Spurs scratched him 3 minutes ago. The check mark's not going away. It doesn't mean that he's still starting.
And the other thing too, also, if Eric's here, you could troll him and say what the stuff is that's happening. In fact, I encourage it. You guys should go tweet at Eric right now and let him know that Keldon Johnson is the green check mark over on DraftKings. But here, when Adam's here, we mean business. We're trying to get the real information out here. And my assumption in these scenarios, once again, is unless this is a thing where Keldon Johnson's taking a shit right now, right. I don't think he's playing today. I think what most likely happened is it was either a mistake on the lineup sheet, or what happened was he thought he was going to be good to play. He started warming up, went to the training staff and said, "Hey guys, I don't feel right. Something isn't right here." And they said, "All right, let's bring you in the back. Let's take a look at you." And they're probably going to rule him out after that. I would bet we find out in 10 minutes that Keldon Johnson is questionable again, and then he's going to get ruled out shortly after.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get one of two things in 10 minutes. Either that or Keldon Johnson returns to bench, and it's just going to be like, God damn it.
I have 0% of them for me, but I also want to point out the trickle down effect this has on my lineups, because there are players that I was getting to that I get to less of. And I was not getting to all that much of Kevin Durant before. I get to more of Durant now because, number one, I didn't have forward. I had Keldon Johnson take a lot of forward spot off for me, and that is not an option anymore. There's also more value now that I took Keldon Johnson out, and I just end up getting to more Kevin Durant as a pay-up as a consequence of that. Trey Lyles, Malik Monk, these were guys that I liked a lot as value plays. They're still in my lineups, but not quite to the same extent because these Spurs guys just became much better looking plays. I love Bates Giop as an option right now. Trey Jones looks better. Isaiah Roby now is a great punt play, in my opinion. Before we're getting questions about him, how he's rating out really well in the boom bust tool. Well, now there's another opportunity for him to get on the court and play extended minutes. So guys like Trey Lyles, we said before, that's somebody who fell by the wayside for me. And do you have anything similar like that for you, Adam, where it looks like stuff is going to change for you?
I don't know for sure, but I'm very confident I'm just going to be getting a lot more Spurs at the expense of everything else. Also because I didn't have time to update my ownership. So like all the Spurs are going to be projected to be low owned anyway, or lower owned than they probably will. But also like that's fine because enough people aren't going to adjust. So like the priority for me was basically just getting this redone, getting to a lot more Spurs, more so than like trying to figure out exactly how ownership would be.
Yeah, I mean, that's for me also. And what's funny about NBA is there's so much time where I'll sit here making out projections, trying to figure out like, oh, okay, I want to be overweight to this guy, underweight to this guy. And then it's 4 minutes before the slate starts. Keldon Johnson isn't the starting line. It's like, fuck everything I thought about logically. I'm taking him out. This guy's getting more minutes. This guy's getting boosted. And then we're just running lineups. So whoever pops up ends up popping up.
Yeah. So there, it looks like there were kind of a couple trickle down effects for me. One, I went from like 100% Terrence Davis to 42. I now have 86% Roby, 83% Bates Diop as my two highest owned guys. Still a bunch of Fox, still a bunch of Sabonis, a bunch of Vassell, still a good amount of Pirtle, a bunch of Richardson, more Trey Jones than I had. But then also I'm up to 31% Kevin Durant from 20 because now there's just more value. I went from 4% to 18% Paul George. I went from 20% to 44% on Damian Lillard. So just getting to more of those top projected guys as well.
Yep. These were guys who 10 minutes ago I hardly had any exposure to, and then I just get more of them because the main reason I didn't get to them before, I couldn't fit them into lineups. There wasn't enough value. That ended up not being the case. But Adam, that hour went fast. Thank you for filling in today. We are already at lock. We got a little excitement. 3-game slate. Still, Keldon Johnson ends up apparently not playing just as we get to lock there. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. See you back here tomorrow morning.